Well, right after graduating from Hunter College, I went to an agency just to see what jobs were available, because I had done some part-time jobs while I was going to college. And I started, my first job was with the Arthritis Foundation in the medical department. And from there, things progressed. I took over for the American Rheumatism Association as their executive secretary. At that time, executive secretary was the term people used instead of executive director, but it was a very small organization at the time. And then we went on from there to be part of a section of the Arthritis Foundation. And then later we separated from the Arthritis Foundation in '85. And before that, we moved to Atlanta in 1977, when the president of our organization was Clifford Clark, and he moved us to Atlanta because that's where he was from. I think it was the ARA meeting in conjunction with the Pan American Congress, which was 1959 in Washington, D.C., and we served as the organizers. Someone else was the executive secretary, though, for the association, and he was also the communications director for the Arthritis Foundation. And then after that was the early 60s. I didn't go to every annual meeting at that time, but what was memorable was in 1965 in Philadelphia, when the American Rheumatism Association actually merged with the Arthritis Foundation. And at that time, it had changed from the Arthritis and Rheumatism Foundation to the Arthritis Foundation. But that was a memorable time. But after that, it probably was the 50th anniversary in 1984 in Minneapolis. And there were lots of fun meetings in between. And I watched them grow, in attendance and in membership. Well, of course, you know what I would have to say in New York, but I agree it was in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And that actually was before my time. Well, one thing I need to say, and I don't think anyone else mentioned, there was a time when we had 2 annual meetings a year. We had one in June and one in December. The December meetings they call the interim sessions. And those usually were held in the Washington, Bethesda area because of the NIH. They were smaller meetings than the annual meeting. But we used to have to we talk about the growth of the meetings, but we actually had 2 big meetings a year. And then we did away with the December meetings and changed, instead of a December meeting, we had 4 regional meetings in November, December. So the members always had something to go to, so they had their annual meeting. And then in 1989, I believe it was, we changed from the annual meeting in June to the annual meeting in the fall. And part of that had to do with a lot of our members at that time being of the age where they had children going through graduations in June. Other than the staff working with Dr. Cecil and Ron Lamont Havers. And Dr. Cecil, of course, was very famous, even at that time, because he wrote the textbook of medicine, which most medical students use today, and now it's edited by people like Bill Kelly and, is it Bill Kelly, Ted Harris? I'm not positive, I may be wrong on the actual editors, but that was a famous textbook of medicine. It was called the Cecil Textbook of Medicine, and he was really one of the pioneers in rheumatology. In fact, the name of the association was different even then. It was something like the Association for the Study and Control of Rheumatic Diseases. But over the years, when I go back to people like Claude Bennett, Jack Stobo, Ira Goldstein, who was one of my true favorites, who died very young and he's the only one of the recent past presidents that were during Mark's tenure who had passed away earlier, like in his early 40s of cancer. Every year, every doctor was different to work with, meeting the families of all the members. But one of my real pleasures has been when we started the international membership growth, and that I really feel like I know and have friends all over the world. I also had the opportunity to travel all over the world because of my job with the ACR. I was able to attend many congresses. I also was responsible for having some of the trips, forming like group flights to go to some of the meetings, being like the tour leader to go to. But our membership has grown so much from, I guess one of my real feelings of accomplishment has been with the young fellows, getting them into the membership and seeing them literally grow from young trainees, and some as medical students, because we used to have those medical student awards, which we have continued now on a different level with the REF. But just watching some of them, and there were a few cases where the medical student has then gone on to take a fellowship in rheumatology and later become chairman of the Department of Rheumatology. And then there are those who started out as just trainees that I knew and now have gone not only section chiefs, division chiefs, chairman of medicine, deans, and now, and in some cases, president of the university. Claude Bennett is one example, and Jack Stobo is another that I can think of off the top of my head. Yes, we knew it was leading up to that. There have been, I guess we thought that was eventually going to happen, especially since we went through a lot of turmoil when we merged with the Arthritis Foundation. There was a lot of opposition to that. Some people saying at that time we're making a big mistake. We will live to regret it. But it still has worked out well for both organizations, both when we merged and then when we separated. So, but yes. But I think the most traumatic part for me personally was moving to Atlanta from New York and leaving lots of our friends behind on the staff. That was a sad time, but it also was a nice, something to look forward to, something different. It's hard to put into words. It was although I had the prelude to this by becoming an honorary member, because I thought that would be it, because there is no way a lay person would become a master. I was eligible when they changed the rules for honorary membership, because even then we had a few lay people going way back, including the chairman of the Arthritis Foundation, very beginning, Floyd Odlum, who was the president of the Atlas Corporation, and the husband of Jacqueline Cochran, who was the aviatrix, who was going back to, I think, World War II. But becoming a master, that was very different, because we know it's for physicians and members of the college. So that really was a big thrill. And the other, again, is to see the number of members who have come, and how, oddly enough, my nieces and nephews who have some of them have witnessed this at other meetings, but at this meeting in particular, they were in awe of how they could not go more than a few steps and only to be stopped by someone, and how I knew them all by name, everyone. And then the people from, when I introduced them to Sir Ravinder Mani, I said, he's a knight, and I knew him before he became a knight. And people like that, and from all over the world, a professor from China and from India, and so it was very impressive for them. So it was nice to know that I could still impress my nephews and nieces.